Welcome back to Kettlebells and Cocktails. I'm your host, John, back with my better half, Nikki. Nikki, how are you?
Oh, I'm good. I'm
Are
good.
you?
I've had a whirlwind of an evening.
What's the whirlwind?
I just am in a phase right now where my toddler only wants me to lay in his bed with him at night, and we're trying to like switch off. Like one night is my night, one night is Matt's night, and he's just not into dad's nights,
Right.
putting him down. And like, which sucks for, well, it doesn't suck for me. That's not fair. I love laying with him at night. But when Matt lays with him, it's like, okay, like dad is going to be here for like 2 minutes or whatever. And he does. And after 2 minutes, Matt's like, all right, buddy, like have a good night, go to sleep. And he does. He lets him leave and whatever. And for me, like, I have to wait until he is dead ass asleep before I can slip out of the bed.
Right.
And God forbid he's still awake. Then he's like, no, Mama, I want you to lay with me. And I absolutely cannot leave him when he's crying because he wants me to be near him. Like I can't do that. That's a boundary I can't draw. I'm like, yep, whatever you need. I'll stay here forever. I live here now
Right.
in this room.
The good old days.
So yeah, rough. How about you? How's your night going?
Quiet. Meg's in
Okay.
town, so she's off with her mom tonight. And actually her sister, I think they're out having dinner or something. So
Nice.
very quiet around here, just me and the cat, living my single cat lady life. It's great.
It looks good on you.
Does it?
Yeah.
I'm not sure it feels good on me, but it's all right.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
No, it's good. I needed a quiet night. It's been, busy at work, busy in the CrossFit space, with all the news going on. So the moments of quiet are definitely welcomed. And I've definitely had a good visit with Meg since she's been back in town before she goes to college this weekend. I will say this, I deserve an Oscar. I think someone should send me a trophy or a medal or an Oscar statue because on 2 days ago, Meg tells me she breaks up with her boyfriend, and I did an Oscar-worthy performance of pretending I was sad on her behalf. You know,
I thought you were
it
going to
was
say pretending you didn't know because you'd been stalking her socials or something.
no, no, I didn't know. I mean, I found out, he was in town for the weekend, and we went to dinner with
Oh.
us, and we
Oh.
went to the zoo or whatever. And then the next day, she's like, "Oh, we broke up." And I'm like, you couldn't do that before I bought him dinner, like,
Yeah.
you
Could have
know,
saved me $100 right there
yeah,
between the zoo and the dinner.
yeah, that was kind of the point, but. No, it was all good. It was good stuff. So it's been kind of quiet
Crazy.
around here. Yeah, nothing too nuts, and just trying to live my best life as usual.
Mm.
That's it.
How is your mental health veering after? I just feel like it's been crazy ups and downs over the course of the last couple weeks with all the things that we love in our community.
I'm holding it together pretty good. It's funny. I thought to myself, all right, I'm gonna go have my second therapy session tonight, meaning this
Mhm.
podcast, because I did one last night and I did a couple last week. Doing the lives like this has been very therapeutic because you get questions from people in the community. You get to talk about what's
Yeah.
going on. Um, a lot of discussion. I mean, some of it's kind of crazy, but um, community is important, even if you don't agree with
Mhm.
the community. If that makes sense,
Yeah.
it's kind of like church. Like, I've used this analogy a lot. Like CrossFit's a lot like church. Like, my joke is always when people are like CrossFit's so toxic. I'm like, have you ever been to a church? Like, have you ever seen people fight
Mm.
within a church community? Because it's not that different. And it kind of feels that way at times, but there's something special about being around people that are like-minded, even if you completely disagree about what you're like-minded about, you know?
Yeah.
And so that part's been really good, just to have a chance to talk to people and hear from them and get questions. And I got a ton of messages today from people that say, "Hey, I really appreciate these podcasts, even if I don't agree with you." and
Yeah.
and that's cool. Like I don't need people to tell me I'm right or smart or whatever. I mostly have just wanted to be able to talk to people and let them get their feelings out, and that we can all, kind of start to resolve these. I've been calling it trauma. I don't know if that's the right word or not, but just, can we resolve these feelings together and feel better about the future? So,
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. And I felt that way about our show last week, which I know I had said before, like I had a hard time even necessarily wanting to come out and add to the content around everything that's going on. But the more I thought about it, the more it felt really nice to just voice stuff. It was like cathartic,
Yeah.
you know? And in a really hopefully respectful setting, because I agree with you, like I don't necessarily need everyone to agree with me, nor will I agree with everyone else, but it's important to just get it all out there and I don't know, use that as momentum for healing
Yeah.
if possible.
Brad has a question came in the comment. I'll be curious on your feedback on this, Nikki. It says,
Mhm.
do you find you're around people outside of CrossFit? It's amazing how they have no idea or clue what's going on. And around the CrossFit community, it's all anybody can talk about. Have you had anyone outside of CrossFit that's asked you what's going on?
Yes, I did. My very best friend came over last weekend with her husband and her kids to hang out. And he's not a CrossFitter by any means, but he's the sports guy. And he was like, what is going on with CrossFit? I think he said I saw on ESPN. And it's crazy because he just said it like someone who, is completely on the outside of the sport. And to him, it's just like, oh,
Right.
a thing he saw on the news. He was like, didn't a guy die? And it came
Right.
across so like crass to me
Right.
because we're like living it, we're grieving, we're like, I can't turn my brain off about everything that's happened. And it really hit me in that moment that people who aren't experiencing this alongside us, like we're just another headline. And
Yeah.
it's not bad. Like I wasn't mad at him or anything like that for saying it. It was just like, whoa, there's some perspective where I guess not everyone is really going through it the way that we are. And it's hard to almost accept that because it feels like such a big deal to us, doesn't it?
That's interesting. I had almost an identical experience today. I was working with some people that work for me, and one of my employees said the exact same phrase to me. He was like, "What'd
Mm-hmm.
you do on your vacation?" I'm like, "Oh, I stayed home, watched the CrossFit Games," and he phrased it exactly the way you just worded that,
Mm-hmm.
and it caught me so off guard. Like I didn't know how to
Right.
respond to him, because it's for those of us that watched it and have been dealing with it. It's very traumatic, and he said it so glibly, and not
Yeah.
intending offense by any stretch of
No,
imagination. He was just like, I think often people view these, they view CrossFit as a sporting event, and they're probably viewing it no different than the NFL or NBA or whatever, and just
for
think that
sure.
we don't have the same level of connection. They don't recognize how small the sport is, and
Yes.
it just caught me off guard. It was
Same.
kind of
Same.
weird moment. How about at
And
your
it
gym? Brad's got a
well,
second question here. Same kind of same thing. Is your affiliate? They have opinions on it, or is it business as usual for the casual gym goer?
hard for me to answer this question without a little bit of like bias because I think people at my affiliate usually like come to me wanting to chat about this stuff knowing that I'm like slightly more connected than the average person to the sport. So my experience in the gym has been a lot of people wanting to like chit chat about it or just like talk about their feelings or say they do or don't agree in very kind and respectful ways. But I also know that our whole affiliate is aware because our gym owner, when it happened, sent an email, a really lovely, thoughtfully worded email to the entire community explaining what happened, explaining that we wanted to do the memorial workout, pointing people toward the fundraisers and things like that. So everyone in my affiliate is aware of it, but I would say the only people who seem to really be chatting about it are people who either A are like super fans or have been doing this for 10 years or people like that, or
Right.
B people who kind of like know we have this podcast or know I've been on the sidelines and want to talk on a take the conversation to the
Yeah.
next level about, things that we've experienced.
I will say this confirmed for me what I felt I already knew to be true, but definitely makes me know I was right about it, which is the casual gym goer doesn't give a rat's ass about the CrossFit Games.
Mhm.
Like the bulk of my gym had no idea this had even happened,
Oh,
and those that did, were just like, I don't want to say they were heartless about it. They just like it wasn't. They weren't watching. They don't really follow. They just know what happened, but
right.
it wasn't a thing. And I felt that way
Sure.
for a while. That like I don't know what the number would be by percentage, but I think the bulk of the community doesn't care about the sport. I think we overinflate the sport to some degree. Like
Mm,
the average person just wants to work out and have a good time, and the sport's cool,
sure.
but they want to be around their community, and it's confirmed that for me, at least in my affiliate, that most people don't. Now there is, but the 5% that loves it really loves it.
Sure.
Like
Sure.
they're insane about it. I probably fall into that 5%.
Hmm.
So
Well, and I think there's also a percentage of people, it's probably small, but there's a percentage of people who follow CrossFit the sport who aren't
Right.
in an affiliate. There's someone in my husband's family like that who asks me about all the events I go to, and he's rattling off stats about the athletes, and he's so
Right.
into it. The sport fascinates him and he loves it. He's never set foot in an affiliate, nor will he ever. He's not a fitness kind of guy, but he's a sports guy and he
Yeah.
loves it. So, there's to each his own for sure.
It's been an interesting moment for me as an affiliate owner watching people's opinions on it in my affiliate where they don't have much of one, and then seeing online other affiliates already de-affiliating over this. And
Mhm.
I'm not judging anyone for that. Like whatever decision you need to make for your business is your decision. It's not for me to judge you, but um, I only find it interesting because I'm wondering how connected those affiliate owners are to their community. Like, does their community really love the games and it is that important to them that they feel the need to affiliate? Or is it just the owners individually pissed and going to pull out? Like, I don't know the answer to that question. It's just a really interesting thing I want to see unfold and get the answers
Yeah.
to over the coming months, and see how that shapes. Um,
Yeah. And that brings up an interesting point in thinking about, do people generally view CrossFit the affiliate, CrossFit the methodology along the same lines as the CrossFit games? And we've been having
right.
this conversation up, down, and sideways for the
Yeah.
last however many years we've been doing this podcast, where I do feel like they're different silos. I do feel like they're totally different approaches to everything that has to do
Right.
with CrossFit itself. But if an affiliate owner feels like it doesn't matter because it's the same name and it's the
Right.
same brand on both of those things, and I don't want to be associated with XYZ that happens, maybe it's in this weird corner of the sport, so I'm going to de-affiliate. Like, I understand that perspective. So
Yeah.
it's just, I think the community is probably divided on, like, are they the same? Does it matter? Or can you separate out your business, your methodology, your thing that you're doing to help your lifestyle
Right.
from something else that you might not agree with that the brand or the company does? I don't know.
Well, unfortunately, they're not going to be able to separate it in the short term. I talked about this last night, but I genuinely believe that in the short term, affiliates are going to be negatively impacted just because of the news cycle. I mean, if
Mhm.
you Google CrossFit right now, it takes you right to the CrossFit homepage, but then there's 12 articles that say
Yeah.
CrossFit and death. And now you've got even, Fikowski's interview in Men's Health, which is a pretty big publication. You
Mhm.
start funneling all that into the search engines, and the casual person that's just looking for a place to work out is seeing this and like, oh, I'm not sure I want to try that. So
For
I
sure.
I don't know what that time frame is. I don't know enough about search engine optimization, know how long that lasts. You'd probably know better than I do, but I
Yeah.
suspect, at least for the next quarter, that's going to be a negative impact on affiliate growth and people looking. And unfortunately, I mean, obviously the most unfortunate thing is what actually happened, but unfortunately for affiliates, it's going right into the cycle of the year where people are looking for gyms. What I mean?
That
Like, yeah,
typically is the start of the new year is
yeah, yeah,
when
yeah. So,
people, yeah.
well, but we're wrapping up Q3, so you're
I
going to have
know.
Q4. So if it doesn't get off the search engines before December, it's going to
Mhm.
be rough for affiliates if that new cycle is still going. And bluntly, this investigation and the autopsy and all the news that will come out are going to last far longer than I think we all anticipate. So it absolutely could go into Q1, which will hurt them if it continues to hit the news. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm kind of guessing like everyone else. As an owner, I'm like, God, I hope it doesn't happen because that's, a good time of year for us to pull new people in
Mhm.
and bring people into the fold. So
Yeah.
we'll see.
Yeah. And it would just, man, it would suck how many people wouldn't have the chance to be positively impacted by this methodology because they're under the wrong impression of what walking into an affiliate could do to them.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I fully agree with that. I have big feelings about it. Obviously, I can't speak for all affiliates. I just think of mine, and I'm kind of wondering where else would they go. Kind of our short term competition. I think for most affiliates are like the boot camps. The
The Orange Theories,
yeah, yeah,
F45s. Yeah.
yeah, that sort of thing. And so you possibly lose some people to that, but.
Mhm.
The long-term ramifications of the community that we have is solid and will stay. And as long as, affiliates can focus on the people they have and keep that membership, will survive it,
Mhm.
assuming, of course, that HQ survives it. You know,
Yeah, all that remains to be seen. It really depends on, I suppose, the findings of the investigation, which,
they're in a precarious spot.
yeah,
I
yeah.
mean,
Even the findings, I feel like will end up being questioned, all things considering.
yeah, there's no doubt about that. I mean, we're speculating like everyone else, but I think it'd be a pretty good guess to say that there's going to be some eyebrows raised to the findings, and then whatever decisions they make from the findings, regardless of what they are. And I'm not taking a position on what those findings should be at this point. Whatever they decide, if you look at comment sections from today, is going to be really divided
Yeah.
across the
There's a lot
board.
going on. There's a lot going on.
There are some
Oh,
pretty ugly comments that people. I love people's passion. I love the fact that people love what they love. I love the fact that
yeah.
they feel so connected to some of the personalities that are involved in this, that they want to kind of aggressively defend them. And I think that's okay. Like, if you feel that strongly about someone. I was laughing to myself today. I was like, man, if I ever get into some sort of trouble, I hope people don't come to my defense like this without the facts. You know what I mean? I mean, and I'm not.
That's an interesting perspective. Like, what if I'm really fucked up? You guys really
Yeah.
don't want to be sticking your necks out for me.
Well, it's like we've joked forever that CrossFit is this cult, and I'm starting to believe it's more of a cult of personality than an actual cult.
Oh, I
Yeah.
could get behind that 100%. Yes.
And that's not judgment. Like, we've built, like, when I say cult of personality, it's almost like um, miniature celebrities. Like
Yeah.
and Dave has built this through his efforts. He did a great job over the years as the guy leading the Open, as an example. And so he's built a lot of raving fans to that people enjoy that experience. And I think people connect to experiences, not even to people, but they relate that. It's kind of like the same reason people were so pissed off that Sean didn't get to do, and you, for that matter, didn't get to do the games this year, because they get connected to what you do. They like those experiences and they want that experience again. It's like that dopamine release that they want.
Hmm.
And so I think people get so fired up about that it's now transferring into these comment sections, and into everything else. And you couple that with the fact that everyone's either majorly or minorly traumatized, and that changes. When you get an emotional response, it's far different than a rational response, and so it's
Yes.
making some of these interactions pretty difficult. you know
I think too, in addition to the experience element of it, and we've talked about this before, but like our sport in being a little bit newer and being a little bit younger is so accessible. So when you talk
yeah,
about making micro celebrities within our community, and they are micro because our community is
yeah,
so niche. Not only are those people well known, but you can talk to them. You can DM them. Sean will probably answer your DM
right,
like the man himself. And that gives people a certain amount of ownership
right,
of those
yeah,
people and those personalities. It makes them feel not just connected, but entitled to them, and maybe entitled to defend them or entitled to fight them or their opponents.
yeah,
So it just it man, it ripples. The ripple effect is wild in an area like social media, where people are already not afraid to shit on whatever or whoever because they're, hidden behind a keyboard.
right.
But then add in that element of like wanting to defend the relationship you feel like you have with this celebrity, and whew, people will go off.
Yeah, well, and I think,
Oof.
there's a lot of commentators in the space as well. I mean, tons at this
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
And often you have people that want to parrot your views. Like, I've been really careful to not take a side, because I don't want people out there parroting my ideas or my thoughts. You know what I mean? Like,
You
people
mean
need
like,
to,
well, John Woolley said this, so I believe it? That that kind of
Yeah.
parroting?
Like, I mean, I've been very clear about my relationship with Dave, and I'm not hiding any of that. I'm not backing off of it at this point, but that doesn't, change my opinion of what needs to happen with this investigation and how it needs to go down. And I don't want to shape people's opinions on Dave because he and I don't get along. Like,
Right.
they need to make up their own mind if they like. And if they like him, they like him. That's great. Like, I'm friends with Hiller, and a lot of people don't like Hiller. That's cool. If you don't like him, I don't care. I like him. We get along. It's
Yeah.
okay to like people that other people don't like. Like, who gives a shit? But I'm not going to try to
Right.
shape someone else's opinion on Hiller either. I'm not going to talk them into liking him, and I'm
Right.
not going to talk them into hating him. Like, you just like who you like, don't like who you don't like, and that's cool. You know?
For me in this, and I think we haven't like really said it out loud, but I think right now the drama, if you haven't heard the drama, the latest drama is that the PFAA is calling for Dave's resignation.
Right. Step
I
down. They want to
step
step
down.
down. Yeah, yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
step down. Which is different than resignation.
They want it.
Explain,
They
Mr.
want him to
Corporate.
not. Yeah, they said they want him to step down from being on the games team, but they're totally fine with him taking a role within CrossFit. He just can't be on the
Understood.
games team. That's their
Got it.
position.
Got it. Got it. To me, the position I find myself in that's difficult is I don't have an opinion because I don't have all the facts and because I'm confused still about so many elements. So much of what we're dealing with right now is
Yeah.
like a he said, she said about what happened. And I don't have I can't step out there and be like, "Yes, this should happen," or "No, this other thing should happen." And I think people really want answers. They really want folks to pick a side, and
Right.
they'll tell you that it's shameful that you're on the fence. And that's hard for me because I'm like, I don't want to be pressured into saying something or choosing something and then what later on
Right.
being called out for changing my mind if I do. Like, I just don't fucking know. I don't know. I'm listening to all these arguments. I kind of hear where they're all coming from. I kind of understand everyone's perspective. And there's so many facets to what is happening that I don't have an answer. And that should be okay. And I just feel like people are getting burned on every social platform for having one opinion, the other opinion, and for having no opinion. And you can't fucking win.
Mm.
You can't win.
I have an opinion for whatever that's worth, but I feel like my
Can you
opinion is we
share
need.
it?
Yeah, well, I mean, I've shared it a bunch, and we need to wait and
Yeah.
see. I mean,
Yeah.
that's my opinion. That's not a non-opinion, by the way.
Right.
I
Right.
just genuinely believe that before you know, talk about someone in the public forum and want to see them either kept or kicked out, you need facts. Like, facts
Yeah.
mean something. The truth means something, and we don't have any of that yet. I know what I saw happen live and on the air, but I don't know who's responsible because I don't know what happened behind the scenes. We
Mhm.
don't have any of that info yet. And I also know that what you see on TV or a live stream isn't the full picture. It's just
Right.
the 9 by 16 screen you're looking at or whatever the ratio is, and you can't see what's on the peripheral. And
Right.
so I know I saw what was covered, but I don't know what I didn't see. And so it's not fair to call for my opinion. It's not fair to call for someone's resignation without all those facts. But I also believe accountability absolutely should happen. Like, they need to get to the facts, and once you get to the facts, there needs to be accountability, and it needs to be swift and serious.
Mhm.
Whoever is involved, they need to make the decisions quick and make it transparent for the community so everyone knows, so we can move on and heal and get better from it.
Yeah.
It's pretty simple.
I also don't have a great understanding. Like, I've only seen what I've seen on social media, which is like a black screen with white text on it saying like the PFA wants
Th-
this and
this
wants
one,
that. Whoa!
look at me being ready for
Whoa!
you.
Look at you.
I don't be too impressed. I used this last night. I was prepared
Uh,
then.
well, I'm impressed at you being prepared. Anyone watching this on YouTube gets it. The people listening
Right,
on the podcast have no idea. But yes, this is the only thing that I've seen. This sort of like
right.
post that I've seen online, and so I do not know whether or not this demand. It says we demand that Dave Castro be removed from his position in the sport team. I do not know if this demand comes solely from what happened at the 2024 CrossFit Games, or if there's other reasoning and other facts and other whatevers behind this, because I feel like now the conversations are like, oh, we've brought things up in the past and we've never been listened to as athletes with safety concerns or health
Right.
concerns or whatever. So I just feel like there are so many pieces to the puzzle missing that I don't have the full picture of where this request is
It's
coming from. And I don't have the full picture of all the information that does or doesn't support it. I don't know.
well, it's very complex. I'll just
Yeah.
give you a very broad picture of it, and I'll try to not put any opinion into it so people don't kick me in the nuts. um, uh, the gist of the PFAA is they feel like they have not been listened to for some time. Like they continue to bring things to CrossFit,
Right.
and CrossFit continues to tell them, "Oh yeah, we're going to do that," and then they don't. That's a very simple way of putting it, and I know it's not 100% accurate, but it's the gist of it, right? They feel
Mm-hmm.
like they're trying to collaborate in private, and CrossFit's either going, "Oh yeah, we'll do that," and then they don't do it at all, or they just dismiss them altogether.
Right.
That's their feeling, and they have some points where they can prove it. I think where the community struggles with it to some degree is that the PFAA has not done an amazing job advocating for themselves over the period they've been around. And some of the examples that you hear coming in of HQ not listening to athletes predate the PFAA. Now, that doesn't this is an opinion, that doesn't discount this narrative that CrossFit works in silos and feels like they have all the answers and they don't want to listen to anyone else. But you could make an argument that something that happened in 2015 or 2016 doesn't apply to an organization that was founded in 2020, right? But
Mm.
you could make the counter argument that the organization came to be because you weren't listening to us in 2015. So over that
That.
5-year period, we're just like, all right, well, screw you, we'll organize, So
Mm-hmm.
there's, so I can definitely see both sides of the argument. I think that's part of the argument I keep seeing in the kind of the chat streams is, people wondering, well, why the PFA doesn't really have any power, how dare they demand someone to step down? Um, so that's where the strong opinions are coming from. The athletes at this point seem to be pretty, at least the ones that are part of the PFA seem to be pretty united around what they want. The other part that I think people are frustrated in this is they're asking or demanding, their words, not mine, demanding 3 points, but in the statement they never really say why they're demanding them, or they're not like crystal clear. And
That's what
again,
I mean. Yeah.
yeah. And again, I think it's a little bit of arguing semantics. I think the PFA is trying to be polite's not the right word, but like my understanding is they met with Don on all this. It wasn't like they just posted it and mailed it to Don and said, "Hey, surprise," like that isn't how
Right.
this
Like
went down. Like,
he didn't find out about it on Instagram.
yeah, he found out
Right.
before it got posted. Like he knew it was coming, right? So they had a conversation. So it wasn't a shock to them. Um, but I think, kind of the general community they don't see all that because the statement itself is a little vague as to why and don't have the details. So I think their point is like they've talked behind closed doors around what all their issues are. And they did give more context, to be fair. I don't know if I have them on all the slides here. There's
Oh
a
yeah,
statement in
look.
full, and this explains who the board members are. I think I have somewhere on here. Again, I was prepared last night. I'm not as prepared right now. Let me see which slide it is. It is probably this one. Yeah, so basically what it is, this was a story out of the morning chalk up, but it was, some quotes from the athletes, and the gist of like what the straw that broke the camel's back. And this is, Fikowski talking, is like when this went down and they pulled everyone together, they're saying that Fikowski went to Castro and said, "Hey, you guys have to make this decision. You can't let the athletes do this. It's too much for us."
The decision to
And
continue competing
yeah,
after
to
the death.
continue or not continue. And Dave's like, "All right, and Dave told him, we're going to do that." And then the very next day, Dave gets on an interview and goes, "Hey, the athletes decided to compete." I'm paraphrasing a lot, so nobody yell at me for that, but that's kind of the gist of it, right? And so now they're mad. They feel like Dave lied to them and didn't handle it well. and it's kind of the straw for them was like, hey, we went to you in good faith and said you need to make a decision. You said you would, and you left us hanging on this. And I think the opposite side of the coin, those that are um, Team Dave, we'll just call it Team Dave for the rest of this,
Fine.
feel that he was in the right by bringing them together and asking
Mm-hmm.
for their opinions, and then was obviously in a very tough spot. So I can see both sides of it, but this was in the PFA's mind and the athletes, this interaction with Dave was not unique and special and a one-time thing. They feel
Right.
like they've had many conversations with him that went this way, where they were told one thing and something else happened.
Mm-hmm.
So again, I don't have all those details, and I'm not saying they did or didn't happen. I'm not accusing Dave or defending them. It's just that's their position. So,
Yeah.
I don't know how it's going to shape up. I think that if you look at this in its simplest form, do you know what Occam's razor is? Have you ever heard that
Yeah.
term? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Which is basically whatever the simplest answer is almost always true. Right.
Correct.
And
Yeah.
and that's how I'm trying to look at this. And the simplest thing is that we all need to recognize this isn't as simple as saying it's not like a car wreck in NASCAR,
Right.
right? It isn't.
Yeah.
Like this is a very unique circumstance that again we don't have all the answers to yet, but ultimately someone passed away in an event and there has to be accountability for that. We don't know
Yes.
yet what that accountability looks like, but there will absolutely have to be accountability at some level, whether it's Don or Dave or 15 underlings or just the people on the paddle boards. Like, I don't
Right.
know, but there has to be accountability. And I think that's the kind of the common ground everybody should have here is like, look, we
Right.
just need to wait and see what the report tells us and see if CrossFit's got the cojones to bring accountability to it and whatever
Right.
that looks like. And we should all be comfortable with whatever that accountability needs to be, it needs to be.
Yeah.
And like everyone knows, I could care less about Dave. Like we don't get along. I love Don, but if Don's got to go, he's got to go. And I'm committed to
Right.
that.
Right.
And if Dave's got to go, he's got to go. I'm committed to that too. And if neither of them have to go, I'll commit to that as long as they can prove it to me.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
That's what I see the most of in terms of like the chatter online and people voicing their opinions. A lot of people I see are like, looking at this call for Dave to be removed, and then they're kind of out there being like, right, because Dave was out there on a paddleboard and could have made a difference. Like that, I think, is what is really missing in the understanding of what's going to be unveiled here with the investigation is oftentimes in a corporate structure,
right.
which CrossFit is a corporate structure, that accountability can ladder up to different positions that might not to us on a daily basis seem like they are directly responsible for the safety plan or the hiring of these people or the whatever. But in a corporate structure, that accountability can ladder up. And that's just how it works.
Yeah. I think people are, I mean, bluntly giving Dave too much credit for his oversight and what maybe he's in charge of. Right. Like, and not thinking through all the little things that could have happened that could have caused this that he would have had no control over at all, even though he's the head of it. And same for Don. And the reverse of that could be true too. They could be completely involved. It could be absolutely their fault. Like that's why we have to wait. Like I was
Right.
speculating with someone today and I said, well, we don't even know, like we don't know anything.
Right.
What happens when the report comes back and we find out the people on the paddle boards didn't have lifeguard certificates at all? But they told us they did and forged them again. I know this is an extreme scenario that's not going to
Yeah. Yeah.
happen,
Yeah.
but
This
you
is
get my
made up
point.
for the
Yeah, yeah.
example.
My point is though, like I've seen a lot of crazy shit in my life, a lot, and I'm in a dangerous industry, by the way. Like we have a lot of bank robberies.
Yeah.
They're not uncommon. I have had a gun put in my face before. Like it
That is so
happens.
scary.
It happens, right? And we have security protocols for it. And if you don't follow them, bad things happen, both to people and to the accountability that happens with it.
Right.
But you can't control stupid either. And
Mm,
I've seen things happen in branches that where we had the perfect security protocols, and the one person that you think wouldn't do anything dumb did something really dumb. So all bets are off.
Yeah,
Like anything could happen. So that's why I'm so hesitant to give any judgment here and want the facts because I know how these things work and they don't always come back the way you think they're going to. They never do.
right,
There's
right,
always there's always some variable you can't account for, and that's what we need to see.
right. It
You
is
know?
crazy how many people I see who already think they know exactly what's going to come out of this.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. There's some other questions there I think
Mm.
that are interesting. Let's see. This kind of looks like the back end of a question, but I would trust the quote unquote findings of the PFA more so than this independent third party. I don't. Well, I don't want to say I don't know if I would. I've already gone on record. I don't feel great about the independent third party only because they have connections to a sponsor within the games. And again, that
Yeah.
doesn't mean that the third party is going to be crooked or do anything weird. I think you just want it to have the complete visibility of of no potential to be bad, right? Like it's funny. I talked to Hiller about this. He and I were chatting on the phone the other day about all of this stuff, and he said to me, "We're talking about the third party findings," and he's made a great analogy. He's like, it's a lot like the drug testing program within CrossFit. We use drug free sport, right? Instead of WADA. Well, the difference between drug free sport and WADA is that drug free sport releases the findings of the test directly to CrossFit and lets CrossFit release them to the public. WADA releases them to the public directly.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's the difference between, it's just a transparency difference. Do you want to trust the company to be fully transparent, or do you want them to be actually fully transparent and just release it to the general public? And it's kind of the same thing. Like I'm not saying that drug-free sport isn't fair, and I'm not saying that CrossFit's
Right.
holding on to people that failed drug tests and not talking about them. But you could be 100% positive when WADA gets them, they just release them to the public. So it's transparent. It's kind of the same thing here. Like I want a third party review that I can say without certainty they have no connection to CrossFit whatsoever. And I don't want them
Right.
to have connection to the PFAA either.
I wouldn't either. I
You
wouldn't
know,
either. I totally understand where that thought process is coming from because you would think that that is the organization that is doing the absolute most to get to the root of what is going on for the athletes.
right.
However, those on the board and in the organization do have their own biases. They have to. They've been a part of this sport for the better part of the last decade. So they're not coming at it completely unbiased. And I would want something purely independent of both parties, truly, for the best
Yeah.
answer.
I'm not smart enough to figure out how to get to that point though. I mean, everyone's has a stake in this game.
Mhm.
Obviously HQ and Berkshire has a huge financial stake in making sure that this thing gets done properly, but also doesn't wreck the company. And the PFAA wants, as they should, justice for Lazar and to make sure that they're participating in a safe sport. And so I wish what had happened, and I'm gonna go back to our earlier discussion on the PFAA. I think part of the real issue here is because they've had, I hate to word it this way, but no real power in the time that they've been around, or at least a lack
Mhm.
of perceived power. Ideally, if they had been operating in the manner in which they want to, what would have happened at the games is someone at the PFAA would have interceded for the athletes, and Fikowski would not have been the one talking to Dave. Dave would have been talking to a lawyer, interceding on behalf of the athletes and helping make that decision, which potentially would have made that, you know, far less painful for the athletes
Mm.
and got to a better decision. And then when you get to this point where you need a third party, CrossFit and the PFAA would be both putting up names to do the third party review and then mutually decide who they're going to use.
Right.
And it's the fact that CrossFit chose someone and no one else was involved is where I think people are going to raise their eyebrows down the road.
Yeah.
If the only people going to raise their eyebrows are the ones that don't get the answer they want. The two camps we've been
Of
talking about,
course.
right?
Of course. Yeah.
So if hypothetically, if Dave is retained and doesn't leave, all those that want him fired are going to just lose their flipping minds, and the reverse of that will be true too. You
Totally.
know,
I think what would have further complicated that situation this year if the PFA had representation and CrossFit was dealing with you know, basically like litigation at that time in deciding whether or not to continue the games is that I don't have a clear understanding of how many of the athletes on the field are part of the PFAA. And
I
I
don't
think
think
that
they
just
do
would have
either.
right, and I think that that just would have complicated because some people did want to continue competing for various
Yeah, yeah.
reasons. And if they are or aren't a part of that organization, if they are a part of the organization, then they have to go with what the organization goes with. That's what happens when you join that type of a
Yep.
unionized quote unquote group. You have to roll with what the organization is doing. That's kind of the point. But I mean, if you're not a part of that, and then that party is sort of arguing on behalf of the athletes as an entire entity, that would further complicate things in
Right.
a very difficult and contentious time.
Yeah, I think they've got to figure out the PFAA has to figure out how to get their members to lock arms and have enough members to have real meaningful impact.
Yeah.
That's part of the problem. I mean, now the athletes they have, and if you look at the statement, if I can find it again, um, it's signed by Annie Thorsdottir, Brett Fikowski, Dina Swift, Fisa Gavi, Pat Vellner. I mean, these are huge names in the sport. Someone messaged me today. I'm not gonna throw their name under the bus, but they're like, "Do you think Fikowski would have would still be saying this had he won the games?" I'm like, "This dude has been on the podium multiple times. He has more to lose than anyone. Like
Yeah.
he's a contender every year, and there's no money in the sport if you're not on the podium, or not much money." And so you think of him and Vellner, who are and Annie, who's a games champion a couple of times. They have more to lose than anyone to put themselves out there. So kudos to them for being brave enough to get out in front of this and to be willing to shepherd it. But I do think they need more athletes to come in and be a part of it. It's just a hard sell to the athletes because this is just an open style competition. Like anyone can get in if you're fit enough. It's not
Mhm.
like you join a team and someone hires you and they pay you a signing bonus and a salary and you're
Mhm.
competing that way. Like you actually have to get in year over year, and some years you're not. And so they have to make the decision: am I willing to pay the money to be a part of something I may not even really participate in if I don't qualify?
Right,
You
right.
know?
And at the same time, in addition to that, the PFA doesn't have the benefits of a traditional union at the end of the day because so they're going to argue for certain protections and certain safeties and et cetera. And then what if you're an up and coming athlete who's not a part of it, but you qualify? Well, you're still going to get the protections and the safeties and the things that they've been arguing for the entire sport. So where is the benefit and cause for you to end up joining up from the get? It's just
Yeah.
it's all growing at the same time. Like the sport is growing while the PFA is growing, while the need for both is growing. And so figuring out exactly how and where to hop on the moving train is really
Yeah.
complicated.
I do think one thing they're doing really well, and I hope it helps them long term. And I'm going to, I say all this, I should have prefaced all this with saying I'm a big fan of the PFAA. I've worked with them
Mhm.
some. I know Grace and the team there, and I was texting or DMing one of the guys there today, Mitchell, a few times, just joking around mostly. And so I love the work they're doing.
So
That's not going to,
important.
yeah, it's not going to keep me from being critical of them. But one thing I think they're continuing to do well, they're starting to do well, is partner with the other comps. Like they're linking
Mhm.
arms with Wadapalooza, and so I think if they can show that they can push athlete safety at comps outside of the games, that's going to give all the athletes more interest in doing it, because the athletes do have a better chance to qualify for a Wadapalooza or a Rogue, or and there's a lot of these like summer slams and things like
Yeah,
that
yeah,
now
yeah.
that are really gaining traction. And so if they can have an impact in those kind of competitions, I think it makes sense for most of the athletes to do it. So I hope they can really get some traction there and make it happen.
Yeah. And kudos to the competition directors for seeing the value and having like the seal of approval or the stamp of approval from the PFAA on their event, because that's also going to help make this more of a unanimous and ubiquitous term for us in the community to understand that the organization is doing what it needs to do in order to put the athletes first. Like that is, it's like having the organic label on
Right.
food. Like we're all just going to agree that that's more important.
Yeah, yeah. So Justin has a great question here. Appreciate you asking this, Justin. Other than the Lazar incident, what safety issues is the PFA wanting to be addressed? So it's interesting. that Men's Health article, and I meant to clip it and bring it up here, so I wasn't as prepared as I said I was, Nikki,
Wah,
but
wah.
I know. They're looking for some simple stuff. They want some input into reps. Like, they understand this is a sport that we're going as fast as possible, but the people programming it have never competed at this level. And it's like an example, I think it was Fikowski gave was, there are moments when you get 1,000 reps of something programmed when 100 would do just fine to find the fittest on earth. The goal of the games is find the fittest on earth, not to punish people, right? And that's where they feel that, partly the collaboration has been bad. When they say safety issues, they're looking back at, obviously some very specific events where you've had people, have heat stroke or borderline heat stroke or having to drop out because the competition is just, wildly, kind of insanely tough due to conditions on the field. There were moments, some of this was like 2015, 2016, but when they're in Carson, they were in the direct sunlight. There's a story of Emily Abbott doing pull-ups and her hands are literally just blistered and shredded, because of the heat on the bar, which has nothing to do with fitness. It's just, just a safety issue. And so
Yeah,
they're just looking for standardization of some of that to make sure that they know what they're getting themselves into so they can make their own personal decisions where they want to compete in it or not. And to make sure some of those things are so standardized they can't happen, like having a black pull-up bar in 100-degree weather under the California sun, that sort of thing.
right. Yeah, and there were a couple other specific incidents that they cited, like they were asking for ropes for rope climbs, not to be long enough to be sort of like trailing on the ground because
Yeah.
they were worried that people were going to roll their ankles, and then that happened to Scott Panchik.
Yeah.
They were referencing one of the regionals. I think it was still regionals at the time, that had just so many dips programmed that like a very large number of athletes ended up having pec strains or tears, and that was a piece of programming that probably wasn't most conducive to athlete safety. So those are a couple of the other specific times that they mentioned that they had concerns that weren't necessarily addressed, and then things happened and they weren't pleased. So
Yeah. This is more of a comment than a question. Rogue Invitational will be interesting knowing Dave's connection to Katie and the team at Rogue. Will athletes go to Scotland if Rogue doesn't distance themselves from Dave? They're absolutely going to Scotland. Nobody's skipping Rogue. That's a great event. I
what
don't
a
care
great
how
question, though,
it is.
because
Well, maybe he's right. I shouldn't just blow that off. Then maybe some will skip. Do you think they will?
I think people are so passionate in this sport, especially now, about everything that's happening, that even if even if most of them go, the ones that decide not to are going to make a large statement about their decision.
I think most will go. Rogue has run such a great event for so long. I don't think people will hold against Rogue their friendship with Dave. I could be completely wrong about that. I'm just totally guessing. But
Well,
Rogue is awesome, and it's in Scotland. Like I think
yeah,
some,
it's going to
the
be very
American
cool.
athletes are going to want to like be the first ones there. But
I don't think a lot of people, a lot of like general fans of CrossFit are aware of the connection between Dave and Katie and the team.
yeah,
So unless I think probably the answer to Brad's question here is it depends on whether or not Rogue decides to come out and make a statement some way or another about
yeah,
it.
it's interesting. I mean, bluntly, Rogue probably wouldn't exist if it wasn't for Dave and the games. But
Mhm.
there's certainly a company now that can stand on their own 2 feet. They don't like if the games went away tomorrow, which is a possibility. I mean, we just have to admit it. Rogue's going to be just fine. It would hurt them some, like any other, like the rest of us. But they've built quite a business over there and should be incredibly proud. Also, shout out to Columbus, Ohio. Gotta love Ohio.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I don't know. I don't know if they will or won't. I had not actually considered whether anyone would sit that one out. I struggle to believe that. The other reason why I think they wouldn't sit that out is the payout is good and it's a small
Yeah.
competition field. Like it's
Yeah.
not as big as the game. You're not competing against 40 people. You're competing against 20 or 30. So I think they would likely be, you know, more apt to do that one.
Yeah. I
They still need
really
to make
think it
money.
would boil down to if Katie and Bill decided to come out and make some statement one way or another, that would sort of like declare their connection to everything that's
Right.
going on right now, then people might react to that by going or not going to the competition. But I don't
Yeah,
know
you're
if the
spot on.
layperson really, or even the lay athlete really knows. Like the non super OG athletes probably aren't even super connected to that relationship that they have.
I've seen a bunch of people posting black squares with Dave's logo in it in solidarity with
Oh,
Dave,
really? Oh
which
my God.
I find it really funny. Not, I mean, it's funny and it isn't funny. It's just like kind of funny, ironic. Only because I'm looking at it knowing as conservative as Dave is in his military background, if he's looking at that like cringing or if he loves it, I don't know. That's why it's funny to me because I just don't know the answer to that question. And so my point to bringing it up isn't to make fun of it, but to say that if Rogue came out and did that, that's what would make athletes raise an eyebrow. If they
For
did
sure.
a solidarity move of saying we stand with Dave after the PFA said get him out, then yeah, I think the answer to Brad's question is you'd absolutely have some dropout,
Mm-hmm.
specifically Fikowski and the others that are on that list from the PFAA for sure.
Yeah,
But
that's interesting. I
yeah,
wonder if the PFAA would instruct its athletes to sit out if something like that happened. Because you can't
I
really have like a united front if your members are going against the requests and demands you're making.
well, I have to be honest. I don't know if the PFA has that kind of power. Like in a union, you could tell your union members, "All right, you're not working." But this isn't a union, so I don't know if they have it organized or
I don't know
structured in a way
either.
that they could. I think they would probably make a recommendation. I need to ask somebody that question because I don't
Mm.
know if they could or they couldn't. Here's a good question: do you think a different business model for pro athletes to make money other than just winning top three would help overall?
Yes,
What kind of
I
business
do.
model do you think?
I don't know. Probably a different pathway to success via competition. We've talked about this so many times. I don't
Yep.
know if it's like a triple crown situation, or I know we've talked about pro cards. We've talked about structuring the game season the way that golf is structured, which I don't honestly fully understand, though people have explained it to me a
Right.
million times over. But there are lots of ways at it outside of just, hit the podium and you get this giant check. And I think opening it up to the athletes and having more opportunities, not just for them to win and make money or participate and make money, but more opportunities for sponsors to see them and make money would just be good all around,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah. I'd love to see um, more competitions that CrossFits can collect points to develop some system where they qualify for the games that way and can make money. I think that would be good for them. That's not that different than golf. I'm not so invested in the sport that I've put a lot of thought into it. So don't everybody start sending me DMs and telling me I'm a complete idiot because I know I'm a complete idiot on this. Um, I just know that, like, the two Wadapaloozas are great competitions. Rogue is a great competition. And now there's, kind of a dozen much smaller ones like, the Pensacola Beach Bash or whatever that they could make us, which should be considered maybe a smaller comp and you get some points, but not as many as you would for Rogue or Wadapalooza, because the competition is not as stiff. I think they could do that and, give the athletes an outlet where they don't feel like, they have to go through this path of open quarter semis games, which is really tough on the body. And you make no money in the first three of those. You literally don't
Mhm.
make a cent. It costs you money.
Yeah, I was going to say you pay
Yeah,
money.
yeah, you
Yeah.
pay money. That's the shittiest sport ever. You pay money 3 times just to get an opportunity to get $4,000 to finish 40th or whatever the payout is.
Hey, we pay money just to see our names on the leaderboard. We're not even
I
going
I
anywhere.
know I pay $20 just so I can show a percentage and make fun of my buddy Marty that I beat him this year. That's it. Yeah,
I
it's
have a
great.
theory on all of this that I was talking about it on the OCR podcast that I did a couple weeks
Mhm.
ago,
Yeah,
and I can't believe I've never said it out loud on this show. But I have a theory about why we're so willing to do this and why people are so willing to like volunteer their time and like all of our events are run like 99% on volunteers and like all this stuff. My theory is that we are dealing entirely in endorphins.
uh,
Like just
I
think about it. Like
yeah, yeah.
we cannot seem to explain how and why we're so invested and we want to be a part of it and we're willing to give our time and our money and our energy and our emotional capacity to this sport. And like why? There's no other brand in the world that this shit happens to, just
Mm.
CrossFit.
Again,
And
you've
my
never
theory,
you were not raised in a Southern Baptist church, Nikki. So let me explain to you how churches work, because it's exactly like this. My I, my mom is an amazing woman
she
in
is lovely.
so many ways. She is like the loveliest person you've ever met. So sweet, so kind, caring, loving, loves everybody, non-judgmental. Like, I know everybody feels this way about their mom probably, but
No, not
mine's
everybody.
yeah, mine
Your mom
yeah,
is really like that for real. Yeah.
my mom's really the best. And but growing up, she spent time working at churches, and a lot of that was just purely volunteered
Mhm.
because she loved the community in that local church and she wanted to help people. And inevitably, over the years of these churches, she'd end up quit doing those roles because she'd become disappointed in the personalities that were around her that would fail
Mhm.
her,
Yeah.
and which is very similar to what we see here. Like, we love CrossFit so much, we're willing to judge a competition, and God bless the people that are willing to spend thousands of dollars to
Yeah.
fly to Fort Worth or Madison and do this on their own dime. Like,
Yep.
I've really thought about them over the last couple of weeks here,
Yeah.
thinking that all how everyone has been traumatized, and no one's special in that. But really, like, how heartbreaking it is for those that were volunteering, that went down there to commit and give time to the community, and spent the money to do it, to come away traumatized.
Yeah.
Right? Again, there none of us are special. We've all gone through that some. So I'm not trying to highlight it in that regard. It's just like, I just feel so bad for them.
Yeah.
They went down there going, I'm going to do an awesome thing and I'm going to love what I'm doing. I'm going to
Mhm.
help people. And
Yep.
then this horrible tragedy happened. And I'm
Yeah.
just, trying to think, how do you resolve that in your mind? Like, just tough.
Yeah, I don't know. But my overarching theory is kind of similar to, maybe the reason I think that a lot of the people that do that type of volunteering for their religious organization probably are doing it out of lots of feelings of hope and
Yeah. Yeah.
faith and good teachings in that religion that require that type of service. But I think for us in CrossFit, I'm telling you, we are dealing in the
You,
currency of endorphins, and we're
you,
just like, we come off of a workout so high
oh,
off of
there's that.
endorphins that we're like, what else can I do? I gotta
You,
volunteer. I gotta be a part of it. I gotta work out again so I feel like I want to do it again.
You don't remember the part in
Crazy.
the level 1 where they talk about hope and faith and charity? You don't remember that?
The Church
Man,
of CrossFit.
you missed that chapter, I
I
guess.
put
That
my
was on.
coins in the hat as it came around. I do want to maybe even close out with one other topic that I've had on my mind, and it sort of goes along with what you just
Sure.
said, where it's really hard to reconcile these, especially the volunteers that went out there and that are really coming away facing this difficult emotional trauma because they were there for it and they don't know how to reconcile it. And I think we, the people watching it on the live stream, have a different sort of like something that they're trying to reconcile, and the rest of us in the community are all just trying to reconcile our emotions. I think it was maybe Scott from Battle Cancer who wrote something on Instagram. I
Mhm.
can't remember where I saw it first, but it really resonated with me. This feeling of guilt for grieving. And I thought it was really interesting because I've been feeling it too, where I've been feeling so emotionally impacted from everything that's been happening. It's tough to shake out of my mind. Like, it's tough to focus on stuff because I'm still reeling from everything that we've been experiencing as a community. And I'm almost feeling a little bit of guilt for feeling that way because I did not know Lazar well. And am I even allowed to feel this level of affectedness by something that I really wasn't personally connected to on the same level as someone who was
Mm.
friends with him or knew him or was there on the competition floor or was nearby
Right.
volunteering. And I just thought it was really interesting because obviously the answer is yes, you're allowed to feel everything that you're supposed to be feeling in that moment. Everything that you're feeling is right for you in that moment. But I was just like, damn, I have been feeling guilty. And I always want to say first, like, when someone asks me how I'm feeling, I always feel the need to be like, well, I didn't really know him personally, but I'm
Right.
feeling X, Y, or Z. And it's just an interesting concept that I think a lot of people in the community are struggling with right now. And
Well, to be
I'm
fair,
here to say it's
Nikki,
okay.
you're half Jewish, and guilt's your default.
It's true.
in the Jewish community, so that's part of it.
It's true. I'm making gefilte fish for
Yeah,
dinner,
yeah,
everybody.
there you go. I think you're spot on. I've thought about that recently as I've been reading
Mhm.
athletes' comments, and some are more um, aggressive than others.
Mhm.
Some are sadder or angrier or whatever. And I think collectively, we all are sharing some sort of level of survivor's guilt. Like
Mm.
this, because I didn't know Lazard at all. Did not follow his career. Everything I've seen about him, he seems like he was really amazing, like just a beautiful soul. You know, but I didn't know him. But I think we view this as it could have been anyone. It could be any of
Mm.
us. Now, granted, none of us are competing, but he's part of our community, and so I think there is the very real trauma of survivor's guilt, and the athletes are obviously feeling it dramatically because this is a close friend and someone they've been side by side with, and it could have been them,
Yeah.
and so I think that's part of it, and I think that's a little bit why we're seeing, so much commentary going back and forth is everyone recognizes that to some degree. And it's tough and it takes time to get past that. I told someone this today, actually. I was talking, it had nothing to do with CrossFit, but it does apply here. When you go through trauma, it changes how you react to things, and you typically react with emotion, not with logic or rationality. And the analogy I gave them is when I went through my divorce 17 years ago, for about 2.5 to 3 years, I was a completely different person. And I do not want anyone to see that person again,
Mm.
ever. Like, I'm ashamed of who that person was.
Hmm.
And I don't ever want to see him again. And trauma does that to people. It makes you act in ways you would never act otherwise. So some of the reactions you're getting online are just an emotional guilt or whatever, however you want to word it, reaction to the moment that might be different a year, 2 years, 3 years from now. And some of it will be that way forever for them. It just affects everyone so differently. But I do think this, your story of guilt is absolutely spot on, because I think so many of us are feeling it right now. And
Mhm.
bluntly, that's why I've wanted to do these episodes as live streams as
Yeah.
opposed to pre-recording like we normally do, because I think it's important for all of us to be able to talk to each other. And even if we're not answering all the questions, like I've seen people asking questions of each other in the chat that I wouldn't even be willing to answer, but I want them to have the ability to ask each other,
Yeah.
because you got to get that out. And the more you talk, the faster you get to that healing space.
Yeah.
I know it sounds real hippy dippy, but
No,
you
I'm
know,
with you. I'm with you. And I think just like emotions are confusing and you're allowed to feel multiple things at once. And you don't have to, it's not black and white. You don't
yeah,
have to, make a statement or
right.
decide that you're on one side or another or have a feeling validated or not. And if you're kind of like me and you're like almost feeling guilty for being so affected by something that you almost like quote unquote shouldn't be affected by because you weren't there or you don't have a connection or you don't whatever, like take that thought and throw it out the window too, because
Right.
you're allowed to you're allowed to be as affected as your brain is telling you to be.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. What's most important is that you take that and channel it into maybe having a conversation with someone about how you're feeling or, you know, offering up a
Yeah.
hug to
Well,
someone or
to the hug
something.
point, I would add to that, Nikki. People are allowed to feel the way they feel, and I want people to be able to express themselves the way they need to express themselves. But I would ask everyone to be thoughtful about what you're expressing, with the
Mhm.
recognition that others are going to see it. Like I saw a Reddit thread today that Lazar's
Oof.
brother was commenting on some comments that had been made. And I'm like, and it occurred to me in that moment, I'm like, man, family members are seeing the vitriol that's going on.
Mhm.
And they're in the extreme state of, I mean, like, we're traumatized and we didn't know the guy. Imagine if this were your
I
brother or
can't.
sister.
I
And
cannot.
so I have a lot of experience of saying dumb shit online that people saw that I'm like, ooh, I didn't mean for them to see that, you know?
Oops.
And
Yeah.
so I think we just need to recognize that, the things we say are seen by others. And I think many times, we say those things thinking, well, I didn't intend to hurt anybody. And, it happens. So just be,
Yeah.
say what you need to say, get it out, express your emotions when you need to, but, just
Respectfully.
just recognize that others are going to see what you say as well. And put some thought into it. That's all. Just kind of hurts my soul to think poor Luca's having to fight battles while he's grieving, just tough. And I don't know him either, but it's just a tough thing.
There's a
So
lot resting on the shoulders of that family, and unfortunately, more than should be.
yeah, I think we need to recognize they are, they all are, Greg and Dave, not Greg, sorry, Dave and well, maybe Greg, but Dave
Oh,
and Don, um, and everyone that was involved at the games, whether it was volunteers or the media team or whoever. Like I think everyone's affected by it, and we just need to recognize that pointing fingers doesn't help anyone right now until we get the facts. That's all.
hmm.
So
What a perfect way to bring this full circle.
I know. Look at that.
100%. Yeah.
Look at that. Getting there, Nikki. I'm slowly figuring this podcast thing out 5 years later.
Hey, listen, I'm just along for the ride, and I think it's great.
I am gonna give a shameless plug if there's anybody watching our show to follow my other channel, Constantly Buried
Please.
Conversations.
Mm-hmm.
Go like and subscribe, please. I'm enjoying doing that. I love getting to chat with you because this is kind of the best part of my week. And the other channel doing it solo, bluntly, is way harder for me. But I am enjoying the creative spark that it gives me to think about topics that people want to hear and to maybe create a space that isn't in the community.
Mm-hmm.
And so I hope people are enjoying it and will follow and you know do what we do on
Yes.
YouTube.
Well, I will give that a second shameless plug for John's show, because what I really feel like you're doing over there, John, is creating a super safe space. And I guess I hope people feel like that about this show as well, but just trying to create a super safe space to lay out some difficult situations and comment on them without shitting on them, so to
Yeah,
speak.
I'll tell you my mindset for it.
Yeah.
My mindset was never safe space, although I appreciate that you say that. The word I've always come with is moderate, meaning I want to be fair and honest to the topic or the person or whatever we're talking about. I want it to be relevant that people want to hear, that is meaningful to them. I want to be able to share opinions and listen to opinions that I don't necessarily agree with. Like the initial concept, like I'll give you an example. The very first episode I did was with Emily Kaplan, who's with the CrossFit book and Broken Science. She works hand in hand with Greg, and she and I don't agree on a lot of stuff. But I love her. Like she's a sweetheart, and there are things we agree on and things we don't. And it was a good conversation just to get a chat for an hour and let me understand her viewpoint and let other people hear it. And if they agree with it, great. If they don't, that's great too. They learned something, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of the point of it, is just present topics and talk about it and let people make up their own mind. And it's honestly what I've loved. Like I got multiple DMs today of people said, hey, I didn't agree with everything you said, but I really like the show. And that
Yeah.
meant more to me than anything, because I don't need people to agree with me. I'm not even sure I'm right. I mean, I know what I believe, and I'm learning as I do this that particularly in this event, I'm learning that there are moments I wish I had stuck more to my convictions. And it's
Mm-hmm.
teaching me to do that, of saying, all right, if, are these my beliefs? If they are, I'm going to stick to them. But I'm
Yeah.
also going to be willing to let somebody else change my mind and teach me
Yes.
something. And that's kind of the
Yeah.
point of it, is like, if I can create that space for people where they feel comfortable to come in and share their opinions, even if they know they're going to get yelled at or not be part of whatever the quote unquote norm is. I think that's the space I want to be in. And, we'll see how it goes, but it's going well so far. So I'm excited about it.
I love it.
Yeah.
I have
Fun
like
times.
post notifications turned on for new episodes.
Oh, wow. I'll give you a shout out next time. How about
Wow, so
that?
special.
Yeah. It's a lot of work, man. It's like,
I
I love
know.
that's why I love doing this because I can just come in and we can wing it and just chat and just have fun
Mhm,
and talk about our kids and whatever. And like the other stuff, I
mhm.
got to actually work at it and do edits um, and people give me feedback that my edits are shitty, and so I got to go fix those and like not do it the same way the next time. And you know, so it's
Can't
fun.
win, man. You can't win.
No, you are winning. Feedback's a gift. If someone tells you, "Hey, I didn't like this," then you have to consider that maybe more people don't like it, and it's like, even if you're like, "Oh, I loved that idea, but everybody hated it." All right, well, I'll try something
Yeah.
else, and
You know
that's where
what?
the
I take it back then. That's a lovely way of looking at it.
yeah, that's where
Take
the
that
creative
back.
spark comes in. And there are also times where I'm like, "Yeah, well, screw you. I'm going to do it my way anyway because I
Right,
like
of
it, and that's all that
course.
matters." Like,
Yes.
you know, so it's all good. And the best news is I'm actually going to raise a pretty decent amount of money for the GoFundMe off that page
Cool.
for August. So it's probably going to be north of $1,000. So
Very cool.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
awesome.
So that'll be a
Yeah.
good thing.
I'm really glad that people
So
are still supporting the funds because it's really, really, really tough how many, uh, I don't even know how to describe it, but like the financials, when you look at
yeah,
end of life costs, are astronomical. They really are. And if you've never been in a situation where you needed to plan or pay for something in that situation, then you might not know. But yeah, it's really more expensive than you think. So
for
all the
sure.
funds that we can help support the family with are going to go to good use.
Yeah. Well, this has been fun as
Yeah.
always. Love
Yeah.
getting
I
a
always
chance to
feel
chat.
like just like we've been catharting and it feels nice. You said it was a therapy session, and it's true. It's my
Yeah.
second one today.
I want to keep doing these lives because I'm loving having people in the comments, Bright
Same.
Beauty, Brad, Justin, those of you that have asked questions tonight. It means a lot to me to
Yeah.
get to see what other people are thinking and to understand it and to, give my opinion, even if you guys think I'm full of shit, which is fine too. So it's all
Perfect.
good. All right. Well, thank you, Nikki. Thank you for everyone that joined tonight. We will
Yes.
be back soon with more content. You guys have a good evening.